Welcome to the Future AI, a podcast, email newsletter, and online courses helping you understand AI the easy way. And I'm your host, Pranath Fernando. So today I'm really pleased to have on Mona all the way from Australia. So I'm in the UK and I love these international collaborations. And I'm so thrilled to have her on today. I think you're going to be really very interested in what she has to say and her perspective about AI from where she is. So how are you doing, Mona?
Hi, Pranav. I'm good. Thanks so much for having me.
No, it's great to have you on for so many reasons. So yeah, could we start by maybe just sharing with your audience a bit about you and your professional background? So
Sure. So I'm in Australia, as you said. I'm based on the East Coast and Gold Coast. I love the ocean and the warmer weather, so that's why I've ended up here. I'm a psychology of change consultant and an online educational provider as well on the same topic. My professional background is in developing organizations through their people and change management. So I've been practicing for over 20 years and I've got qualifications in human resource management, postgrad in psychology, and as well as coaching and change management qualifications.
awesome. And yeah, could you maybe just say a little bit more about, I suppose, what your particular interests are in psychology? Because obviously, it's quite a broad area. So
Yeah, so I'm interested in the organizational context. So that's where I work in the psychology space. And I'm naturally curious, have always been about human behavior. I think most of us or a lot of us are, and what leads to our optimal behavior, especially in the workplace, and how we can progress and advance ourselves in our workplace to create better environments and high levels of unity, but also where people can thrive and be supported, especially throughout times of change and uncertainty. And also people belong to our society and our community. So whatever we do at work impacts our communities. And also very interested in the neuroscience and the scientific research. So I like to lean on the research and evidence-based practices as well, to inform the work that I do.
awesome. And of course, this is one of the reasons I was very keen to have you on because I think obviously, one of the biggest areas of impact of AI is on the workplace and organizations. And there's a lot of questions about how that's going to work. So I'm super looking forward to exploring your thoughts on this. So yeah, so what are your thoughts, I suppose, getting onto that about the impact of AI on human beings? From a psychological perspective, do you think it's a good thing, bad thing, or maybe something else? I'm curious for your thoughts on that.
Sure. So I guess like anything new, I think there's still a lot to learn, and AI remains a little bit of a mystery as far as what kind of impact it's having. So some workplaces are heavily reliant on AI and are spending a lot of time and resources, and some haven't even maybe begun that process yet of investigating, or they're just starting to. So it's hard to know where we'll be, for example, 5 years' time, even with the organizations that are quite progressive, or the ones who seem like they're not, like they might go in leaps and bounds in 5 years' time. And also, just I guess on the topic of its impact on the workplace, a study was done in the healthcare, so in the nursing environment, where there was the use of robotics and AI.
Mm,
And I found it really interesting. So the robotics and automation was used to take blood samples from the patients,
mm.
and the I guess the purpose was for more technical accuracy, but also to reduce the workload from the nurses. But in that particular study, what they found was that the patients still wanted that human connection with the nurses to feel comforted when they first arrived and when they left, and just during it. And that human connection was only, and that comfort was only possible through human connection. So in that particular study, the nursing staff numbers didn't actually change, but the way they did their work changed, and what they did in their role changed as well.
That's such a great example, I think, of how understanding how this is impacting different sectors requires nuance and thought about, because I think it's going to affect different sectors in different ways. So,
Absolutely, yeah. So the manufacturing industry, like as you said, different sectors are going to be impacted differently. So that's been impacted quite a lot with a lot of automation coming in and things like that. And I did see, there's different commentaries on that. Even I saw a video of on one processing plant, I think, and they still had humans lining up the robotics. So we still haven't quite got there in some instances, but it certainly makes a lot of things a lot easier. And on the flip side, I guess, in companies where we are quite remote based, and there's been studies done on the impact of loneliness, in the workplace, and that can come about through higher levels of digitization and less human connection. And especially when there's already an unhealthy culture in the workplace. So this only heightens that, because there are companies that are remote and they have healthier cultures, but where that doesn't already exist, I think it can add to that impact of loneliness or any other aspects of an unhealthy culture.
would it be fair to say that a sort of simplistic view of either AI and automation, bad or good, is maybe not the best way to understand what's going on with this?
I think so. And you said earlier it's quite nuanced, and it is. And I think it's like, again, like any innovation, it's how we view it, it's how educated we are about it, it's how we give it a go. It's about the conversations we're having in our workplaces. So, if you're a leader and you're listening, trying to have really open, transparent conversations about AI, and if people are fearful about it, creating safe spaces to talk about it, because then you can work through those nuances, and it's not so good or bad. Because I think when people think about things on their own, some people, like the change, innovation of adoption curve, they will run to try something new. And then there's going to be always people lagging behind or fearful, and they need to see others do it first before they go for it. So that sense of urgency isn't going to be there to give something a go. But as a leader, or even as a team member, if we make it safe to have these conversations and podcasts like yours, where people can listen to what the nuances are, and that it's not either or in an industry. I was having a conversation around, for example, airplanes and pilots being replaced by robotics, and then use the example of that research in healthcare, where I think sometimes we think the change is going to come a lot faster than what it is, but it's still quite new. And so I think even when we introduce robotics and AI and automate all of that, it's going to take time to work through the details of, okay, well, what does our new environment look like? It won't completely replace everything straight away in most circumstances.
Yes, and I was just trying to think of maybe some kind of analogy, and it's difficult, I think, because it's something quite unique about AI. But I suppose one obvious analogy is like the use of the internet, and it's a technology, another enabling technology, and of course, one way to think about it is, sure, businesses can, strictly speaking, function without using the internet these days, but you are probably missing out on something. What, even if you're a plumbing business or something like that, even any business that is choosing not to use that technology to varying extents is probably missing out. And I think AI is probably incomparable in some ways, but then also not, because the internet is a bit like a whole new platform for business, whereas AI is like almost like intelligence basically as a technology. So that's a whole nother level. Yeah, curious for more of your thoughts on that, or other aspects, I suppose.
Yeah, no, I think what you've said is so accurate, like that use of AI can apply to absolutely any industry. And so even yeah, in the medical field, in the administrative fields, even in my field of work, so in change management, I use AI for imagery or for for employee engagement surveys, for the sentiment analysis. But it still requires at least the technology that I'm using still requires that human touch to go through it and have a look. But I think if I stayed away from it completely, thinking, well, AI is not perfect, so I'm just going to do it all myself, I think that's, I might suddenly fall behind as well. I think it is important to test things out. And that way we get more comfortable with it. We see how we can use it. When I first went to an Apple computer from the PC, I would go into the Apple store and just try it out because people were like, it's so different. Don't just buy one, you might not like it. So I'd go into the Apple store and I'd just play around with it. And I went, no, you know what? I think I've got this. So the same with AI. You can just grab some of the free tools, play around with it. Even Canva that I use has started introducing a lot of different things that's easy to use and get into. And I was also thinking that along with that analogy that you shared, that we didn't always have mobile phones. We had landline phones. We didn't always have music streaming. We had records and CDs and Walkmans and now we have streaming. So we've come a long way. Like even in my lifetime, I've seen the progression of all of those, and you give them all a go, and then you realize you get used to it. So, but if you don't give any of it a go, I think we don't know if we like it or not. So, yeah, give it
So
a go. That's my
no, it
motto.
sounds like a good approach that people might use. So yeah, I'm curious to also better understand a bit more about just maybe some examples of what you've seen about either the way business is responding to it or how it's working or maybe not working. Because I understand you have some visibility onto how that may be impacting in different ways. I'm really curious to, yeah, better share that great experience, I suppose, that you're seeing. So,
Sure. So in what I've seen so far, some organizations are very proactively looking into, for example, the ethics and the legislation in their country around AI, and then best practice also in their industry of what that looks like. And being quite transparent with the people in their teams around the research they're doing, the learning that they're doing in that space, and what they think might come into the organization. And also so one organization I'm working with, we're actually developing a digital literacy program to support, if someone hasn't had any exposure to, much digital or technology, let alone AI tools and information, they're building up that knowledge base. So, and I think that can create comfortable spaces for people to ask questions. But then I'm seeing or hearing, other industries or other organizations, people have shared with me, oh, we've heard that they're bringing in this technology to replace these particular groups of staff, but there's no other explanation around how they got to that decision, how they're going to trial it, what are they going to do to pilot it. And I think, when these people have shared the examples with me, I can see the sense of fear like, well, now I don't know what's going to happen to my role because they're being kept out of the loop. So, like any good change management, we want to keep people in the loop. And I think people will have some really interesting contributions to how we can use AI. If it's the people that are doing the job initially, those people might actually have a lot of ideas around how it could be better used. As well as, other things they could do in their capacity with the wisdom that they've gained.
no, I think that's extremely valuable insight for, I suppose, businesses thinking about what are different ways we could introduce this and what could be some of the consequences of these different choices about how we
Yes.
introduce this. And I'll just very briefly mention there's a really interesting article by an academic called Ethan Mollick. He's also on Substack, and he wrote this article called Secret Cyborgs. And he was basically what he's writing about is one of the things that makes it hard to understand how this is being adopted is because uh, aside from what the business leaders are doing or not doing in introducing this, employees are deciding to use this themselves without necessarily
Yes.
letting, because of course they can. I mean, the ChatGPT is something they can
Yes.
use. So essentially, people might be thinking, oh, nobody's using AI, but actually, people probably might be. They're just not advertising it for a whole number of reasons, stigma, worrying about the responsive management, etc. So I thought it was a really interesting concept, the secret cyborgs that, you think, oh, AI is not here, but
Yes.
actually you could be working with colleagues that are using it all the
It's here.
time.
Yeah, I actually someone was telling me about a recruitment function within one organization that actually for their candidates, they said, if you do use AI to write your resume and da da da, here are some guidelines that we'd like you to respect as you engage with AI and apply for something. Because I think they had probably seen maybe people doing their entire resume or whatever documentation they had to submit as a candidate using AI, and then it doesn't have their own authentic voice in it. So I thought it was a great way for this company to integrate. Yes, use AI. Here are some guidelines that we've got, which I think is how the best way to use it. Because, like you said, it's here, and some people are going to be using it either way.
No, that's a really
Yeah.
good point, that aside from the choices business leadership makes or doesn't make,
Yes.
there's other things going on, so.
Yes. Exactly.
We're living in a world that has, after all, the internet. People can access things, and so how do businesses, that choose not to say anything or pretend AI doesn't exist? Well, and they may think it's not affecting them, but actually, that may not be the case.
Yeah, exactly. And there's things like depending on the industry, like if it's academia, or even, publications, it's really important to get on top of it straight away because there's copyright issues and all of those legislative concerns. So even if it's from a risk perspective, uh, yeah, it's great to actually acknowledge use of it.
Just to let you know, we're a bit over halfway, just for a timekeeping perspective.
Okay.
So I suppose, can you think of any examples? I mean, obviously, you may want to keep these anonymous, of maybe areas where it hasn't been working so well, I suppose, and or just either through um, the way business leaders are introducing it or not introducing it, or like, what are some good lessons that people can learn from things that are not working? I know you've mentioned a couple already, so.
Yeah. So some of these examples are from the research again in healthcare where they've introduced AI and robotics, but also just looking at because I work in change management, which is getting effective adoption of changes to the ways of working within an organization. So we see it all the time where technology is introduced. So that technology might be automation, it might be AI, that intelligence, but the technology is switched on, but the business processes aren't developed to match what the technology can do. So, for example, with ChatGPT, what are the business processes around? If you use ChatGPT, what type of things do you acknowledge? What what's the referencing style, for example, at its most basic level? So those processes aren't actually updated to be business processes, or even that fear factor isn't being addressed within people. So that psychological transition to adopt something new, and within the research, the healthcare example that I gave, there was another study done where they found that introducing these other digital tools actually meant that they had a higher cognitive load, because it's a type of digital function that those particular staff aren't used to doing. So for a period of time, they've got a higher cognitive load in addition to everything else they're doing. So they have to actually factor that in. So it's a completely new technology. It's a new concept. It's not just a new software, that we already know. For example, that a new web browser, we're already used to Chrome, and here's another web browser. It's kind of the same, but different. But this is an entirely new concept. So it's making space, mental space, head space, thinking space, reflective space to give people to be able to learn the new concept and AI and how they'll actually integrate that into their processes, their training, their customer service or client services. That's several studies have been done on that actually.
Mm. No, that's it's quite interesting how that's working, I suppose there. So yeah, I'd just like to move on to, so I suppose, broaden it beyond, I suppose, business, and just curious for your, I suppose, yeah, thoughts and feelings about how you see AI impacting society, like more generally, and what are your maybe personal hopes and fears, and why about this?
I think, as I said before, I do think we're in the early stages. I know some organizations don't think we're in the early stages because they've been at it for a long time, but from a people adoption, if we look at the larger society, I think we're in the early stages from that sense. And like any innovation, I think it could be used for good or bad. Just depends on who's using it, who's got access to it, who's got the most money, I guess, to do what. Um, and I think one example is when I ask AI to draw an image for some of the presentations that I do, and I say, put some leaders in a room, in a boardroom, I automatically get white men in a suit, for example. So, and we know that that's not the only type of leader in a boardroom. So, and you and I were discussing before that it's currently reflecting the biases we already have. So it's just highlighting that. So, uh, I think having the legislation around us, and even for companies, if the legislation in the country doesn't exist, is having some kind of moral or ethics around its use and the programmers that develop it, so that it's not actually harming any particular group in society, even indirectly. So yeah, I do think it can go either way, just like any innovation, and it's something we really need to be mindful of. And that transparency, I think, can help with that, and having these open conversations again, and even as individuals, to the more we educate ourselves, if we start to see these things, either good or bad, we can speak up about it and have a conversation about it. So yeah, it's not a black or white for me. There's a lot of nuances to it.
Yes, no, absolutely. So, as I'm sure you appreciate it, people have quite a wide range of responses about this topic. It almost feels like quite a Marmite topic. You rarely get a very neutral. It's usually quite a strong response. Either people might be very excited about it or very anxious about it. It's yeah, feels like quite a Marmite topic. And I know, so for example, both of us, well, we met and connected through the Substack platform, which has a lot of writers and creators. And just from my own perspective, I have noticed that there can be, and it may be obviously biased because there's maybe a bit of a bias of the kind of people who are on Substack as being writers, so they tend to be more creative and less technical generally, although you do have some technical people there, but the vast majority of people seem to be quite creative and writers, who potentially might feel threatened by this technology as well. And I see a lot of fear, anger even towards AI as well, and a high degree of skepticism. Some people express the idea that, oh, I don't need this. This isn't going to affect me. It's just a fad. So for those that might hold this quite highly skeptical um, view about this technology, um, what would you say to them, I suppose?
I think, I mean, the visual that comes into mind is the diffusion of innovations curve, the adoption curve, the bell curve. And that's used in public health, for new things, but it's used for innovations as well. And I think usually if someone is highly skeptical, they need to see it work for a group of people first. So perhaps they need to see writers who have used AI to their advantage, or designers who have used AI to their advantage. Personally, I write a lot of newsletters like through Substack or on LinkedIn as well. And while I might do research through ChatGPT as an example, or ask it to give me some dot points that it thinks it's important, if I ask ChatGPT to write a whole article for me, I don't like reading it myself because it's not personal. And I think that's, again, there's no personal stories of exact scenarios that have happened and the emotions behind it. It's very factual, and there's a particular tone. And so if everybody uses ChatGPT and everyone writes in the exact same tone, it's not very diverse. It's not as interesting. So I think uh, actually exploring it a little bit. So what we said before, giving it a try. If you're a creator and you are very skeptical of it and understandably angry, because I think, someone even said to me, "Oh, you're writing all these newsletters, just get ChatGPT to do it all for you." And I could have had a whole conversation around, well, that just wouldn't have been good quality writing, like as a whole, if I wanted to use it. So I think if you are someone really skeptical or angry about it, give it a try and see how you could use it to your advantage, rather than dismiss it completely and maybe miss some opportunities that you could use, because there's yeah, you might decide that there isn't any advantage and it actually might resolve your anger. It might resolve their anger because they see, well, I can actually do it much better. So, and that usually just happens from giving it a go, giving something a trial go.
Yeah, no, that's really a great point. And I suppose one of the things I find quite unfortunate about this. So let's just take some of the examples that you gave that, people don't like the way AI writes. And I think when I like unpick that a little, what I understand by that is sometimes people assume or understand that ChatGPT is about writing articles for you, and so that's horrible and it's useless, therefore AI is bad. And then I think what's tragic about that is I would completely agree with that. I don't like writing or reading articles written. They sound awful. However, what I'd point out gently is that's a really bad use of AI, and I don't use it that way, but I do use it for things like doing research for articles. But I also use it
Yes.
to give me feedback on my own writing. So, what's tragic, I think, about some of the assumptions that some people have about this is they have a certain view about what AI is, and they assume that's all it is, and then they don't like it, and then that kills their curiosity. And what's tragic about that is it's not actually completely accurate, and what they've assumed is all it is actually the worst use case, and then they're missing out on really understanding what it is. And to be honest, it actually kind of reminds me of certain kinds of prejudice, whether that's racial or gender prejudice, that something that's unfamiliar to us we are afraid of, and then we also don't want to engage with it, and so it creates this sort of tension and division and conflict between us and something else, because we think, oh, this alien, I hate it, I don't want to know about it. And it's like, well, that's based on our assumptions, and what if those assumptions aren't correct? But of course, if we don't engage with it, we're not going to find out if those are. And I yeah, I'm just curious because, of course, from a
Yes.
psychological perspective, you'll have your own that angle on that.
Yes, yeah, yeah. And I mean, when you look at well, again, the diffusion of innovations curve, it talks exactly to that some people are going to be skeptical until the very end, until they see the masses taking it on. But also like the big five personalities that have been personality traits that have had so much research. So someone who's very conscientious might need a lot of structure, and might need a lot of um, evidence before they can take something on, for example. So there are personalities that are going to lean towards being highly skeptical for a while, of something, and not being experimental. So the extroversion um, trait would might be more willing, and the openness trait might be more willing to experiment with something, and then they get to find that out for themselves or listen to a podcast like this and get ideas from other people. Yeah, so there's definitely from a psychological perspective, there's going to be different dispositions towards this change and towards this new thing. Uh, yeah, and there's a lot of fear. I think there's a lot of people creating fear about it as well. And the movies we've seen, the robots taking over, that doesn't help.
Yeah, I mean, just from my anecdotal perspective, we tend to see more films about AI from a negative perspective than actually
Yes,
working harmoniously in our offices of the future. When was it ever a movie about that? Like never. So
yes, yes.
so we just in the last sort of 5 minutes or so, yeah, I suppose just summing up, what are some key takeaways that you'd like maybe that you think could be good for our audience to consider about this space and the impact of AI on both business and society that you think could be good things for people to consider?
I think keeping an open mind and experimenting. If you can find a safe way, some way that you feel comfortable experimenting with AI, if you're someone that's currently uncomfortable, it might be going to a trusted friend, a trusted family member, if they've used it, or there might be businesses or government or libraries that offer training and learning, just to give it a go, because I think seeing something for yourself, we need to be independently looking for truths and using our own critical thinking skills rather than leaning on what this person said, what that person said, even what I'm sharing or what you're sharing. Go find out for yourself. Go play around with AI, find out for yourself. If you're a leader in an organization or a business owner, or even if you're someone that can easily influence others positively, I think have really open conversations about AI, bring in different types of expertise, different perspectives, scenarios where it's gone really well and what they've had to do to make it go well. If you like the evidence, look up different research examples and studies about how positive, like the surgeons being able to carry out remote surgery. That's life changing for some people. Some people just, the surgeon wouldn't have had time to travel to that location and literally save lives. So there are a lot of positive stories, but it does take a while to get there and experiment. And so I think more of us need that open-mindedness. And if you need a little bit more hand holding, find someone you trust, yeah, to give it a go, because there's good and bad to everything. It's really as humans how we engage with the thing, with AI.
No, thank you for that. And I think one of the things I think is really valuable about is that in an age of uncertainty and I suppose anxiousness about the future, what I understand from what you're saying is, it's quite an self-empowering perspective that it's something people can actually do something about for themselves, which is not always the case with a lot of challenges in the world, but this feels like something
Yeah,
people could do something for themselves on.
absolutely. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for coming on today. It's been really, really great to share your perspective, I suppose also from a professional and personal view about how you see this impacting both business and society more broadly. And so I'll put a link to Mona's Substack and newsletter below the Substack with show notes for this podcast as well. And so I myself also do um, articles and also educational courses. I have free courses as well to help people understand AI and learn how to use basic tools. So if that's of interest, do feel free to subscribe as well. So thank you again. It's been so great to have you on. And to my
Thank
audience,
you.
I will see you in the next one.